much more disruptive can you make education? For Sanjit Bunker Roy, founder of Barefoot College in 1972, it was to establish a place of learning and unlearning where the teacher is the learner and the learner is the teacher. Bunker Roy grew up with a comfortable life. His path was redirected towards social service after a life-changing trip to a rural Indian village, with a mission to help fight poverty and inequality. He started as an unskilled laborer digging wells, before initiating groundbreaking projects for the growth of impoverished communities. The only college in India built by the poor and managed by the rural poor, Barefoot College is guided by Roy's vision and mission to provide basic services and solutions in rural communities with the objective of making them self-sufficient. For his work, Time magazine included him in a list of the 100 most influential personalities in the world. The Guardian named him one of the 50 environmentalists who could save the planet.
Please welcome the founder of Barefoot College, Sanjit Bunker Roy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I went to the most expensive school and college in India, the most snobbish, the most elitist, the most expensive, and it almost destroyed me. I was all set to be a doctor or a diplomat or an engineer, and then I went to a famine in Bihar for the first time in 1965, changed my life. Saw hunger, starvation, death for the first time, and it really shook me. The 10 kilometers outside Delhi, there could be starvation, death, and hunger, and people living in 19th century conditions. So I went back home, told my mother, I'd like to live and work in a village. Mother went into a coma. She said, look, everything is laid out for you. You're a doctor, jobs are laid out for you. What do you want to do in a village? No money, no jobs, no prospect, no security. I said, I want to be an unskilled laborer digging wells in Rajasthan. She didn't speak to me for many years because she felt that I had let my family down. I should be going to Zurich and New York, not going to a village in the middle of a desert in Rajasthan. But there, I was exposed to the most extraordinary knowledge and skills that very poor people have. And that is where I learned the difference between literacy and education. You know, Mark Twain said, never let school interfere with your education. School is where you learn community, where you learn how to read and write. Education is what you get from your family, from your environment, and from your community. I thought I would start a college only for the poor. Where is it written that just because you can't read and write, you cannot become an engineer, you cannot become a communicator, you cannot become a designer? So we said that we start a college only for the poor, which would reflect what the poor thought, and only what the poor thought would be implemented, applied in the college. So we redefined professionalism. Who's a professional today? A professional is someone who has a combination of competence, confidence, and belief. A water diviner is a professional. A traditional midwife is a professional. These are people all over the world, including India, where you find these people highly respected, still accepted by the community and applying a knowledge which is not exposed in colleges and schools. Barefoot College is 500 miles southwest of Delhi. It's in the middle of a desert. This is a very famous quotation which really reflects the college. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be someone who can't read and write, but someone who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So we said, we will apply this in the college itself. So the college today was built by barefoot architects. Someone who can't read and write today, he is the first barefoot architect. He built me a college at $1.50 a square foot, still stands today, hasn't leaked, doesn't collapse, all run by someone who can't read and write. Today, this college has 150 professionals, and it is the first and only college which is fully solar electrified. All the power comes from the sun. Everything is working off the sun. And this man is the first barefoot solar engineer who solar electrified the campus. He's only done 8 years of schooling, but he knows more about solar engineering, I know, than anywhere in the world. Today, he's a priest in a nearby temple, and he has trained all the barefoot engineers today. This is the solar electrified campus in the Barefoot College. It runs my photocopying machine, it runs 40 computers, it runs my audiovisuals, it runs my dentist chair, it runs everything, the solar. And for the next 25 years, I have no problems with power. It runs a milk booth, it runs power for the library, it runs power for the, you have a solar operated ATM machine too in our village. It has a telephone exchange. We are together now the only rural college in India which is fully covered by Wi-Fi, faster than Delhi. And we have a film editing machine which works off solar. We make all our films. We capture the culture of Rajasthan. We have 4,000 hours of music which is now almost disappeared because we think that is the essence of Rajasthan. If you don't preserve the culture, you really die. We have forestry, we keep all our traditional plants. This is just by way of demonstrating that you don't have to go to school and college to do something extraordinary like this. Today, we have a dentist, a lady who's a grandmother, who's never been to a dentist school, but she looks after the teeth of 7,000 children. That's a dentist chair. We have acupuncturists who have been trained from the village itself. We have a community radio which reaches 50,000 people, about 50 kilometers around Tilonia, all talking about social messages, messages that should deal with the quality of life of people on the ground. If you should come to the Barefoot College, you will get solar cooked food. Now this solar cooker has been made by grandmothers who have actually fabricated this solar cooker, and they're almost German. They're so precise. We won't have Indian women so precise as these women today who made these solar cookers. We have a pathologist, a barefoot pathologist. All people trained learning by doing. So this is the staff of the Barefoot College. We believe in technology transfer. How do you demystify and decentralize the most sophisticated technology into the hands of very, very poor people? So, today, Rajasthan, where we live, sometimes it does not rain for 5 years. But the technology of collecting rainwater, we have learned from the people. This is a rainwater harvesting tank which is 300 years old. But we still believe that if you collect rainwater, you can actually have 6 months of water rather than take water out of the ground. So that technology of the people we actually applied on a large scale. So now we are collecting rainwater in all the schools. Today we collect over 100 million liters of rainwater in 1,200 schools, and 50,000 children have access to rainwater. Cleanest water, purest water, potable water. But if you ask engineers, why aren't they doing rainwater harvesting? They gave me a very stupid answer. They said it was not in my curriculum, you know? Can you imagine? Don't you need common sense? So, all the basic minimum needs we look after in the Barefoot College. One is education. 60% of the children in India don't go to school, but they can only go to school at night, because in the morning they're looking after the chores of their mothers, looking up. fetching water, fetching firewood. So we said, why don't we start schools at night? So we started schools at night in 1975, and today, over 75,000 children have gone to these night schools. But the beauty is, 8 years ago, we thought we would teach them about citizenship, about democracy. So, we had an election. Children between 6 and 14 voted a prime minister. That was the school that it looked like in 1975 with kerosene lamps. Today, all of them have solar lanterns. But these 225 schools reached 7,000 children. And all these 7,000 children elected through a democratic process a prime minister. The prime minister today is 12 years old. She looks after 20 goats in the morning, but she's prime minister in the evening. She has a cabinet, Minister for Education, Minister for Energy, Minister for Women's Development, and every month they sit and decide and supervise their own schools. Why should an adult do that? Why not children? So, this is the cabinet. Every month they decide, and the cabinet decisions are very, very powerful. If they should happen to tell me through a postcard that the teacher is not working, he or she is fired. All the prime ministers are girls, much to the misfortune of the boys. The boys can't be prime ministers, they have to be Speaker of the House, because most of the girls are students at night. The prime minister got the World's Children's Prize from the Queen of Sweden 6 years ago, and she went up, and the Queen of Sweden was absolutely delighted. She couldn't understand how this woman, this young girl, 12 years old, never been outside a village in her life, could fit into Sweden so casually, so well. So she came and said, please ask this young girl on her left where she got her confidence from. So I asked her, and she looked at the Queen straight in the eye and said, please tell her I'm the Prime Minister. 60%, where you have no radio, no television, it is only through puppetry that we reach the communities. Puppet, this man is Joachim Chacha. He's 300 years old. He knows more about gossip in the village, solves all my problems. He's my psychoanalyst, he's my doctor, he's my teacher, he's my lawyer, he's my donor. Solves all my problems for me. And these puppets are made by recycled World Bank reports. Employment is very important today, and so we are training women. What is the most powerful way of communicating today? Is it television? Is it telephone? Is it telegraph? It's tell a woman. Now these women are always there to stay. They are the ones who are actually keeping the families alive and ticking. And we train them in all skills that are required for improving the quality of life. So, today we are actually training over 2 million people. We have reached to all these training programs over 40 years. We solar electrify villages. The villages have to be solar electrified in a barefoot way. What is the barefoot way? The Gandhian way. Bottom up, not top down. You should train people in the community to look after the units. So what if they don't know how to read and write? Today, this is the first woman solar engineer of India. She doesn't know how to read and write, but she looks after solar units for me. So we have trained women from India. The criteria is you have to be a grandmother between 35 and 50. You have to be semi-literate. You have to never have left your village in your life. And you have to have the guts to be able to come for 6 months to learn. And in 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, these grandmothers know more about solar engineering than any graduate after 5 years of university. Guaranteed. So after doing this In India, we thought we'd go abroad. So we got into a collaboration with the government of India, and we said we will try to take the Barefoot model abroad. So today, we have, after covering India in 13 states, we went to Africa. And between 2008 and 2015, we have covered almost the whole continent of Africa. This is the light you have in the villages in Africa. All have to walk for 5 to 10 kilometers for lighting. So why not bring solar light into the village itself? So here are the women, 40 women every 6 months come to the Barefoot College and learn. All solar mamas learning how to be a solar engineer by hand, only learning by doing, not the speaking or written word, only by hand. And what else did we learn? We learned, ladies and gentlemen, that men are untrainable. Men are ambitious, men are restless, men are compulsively mobile, and every man wants a certificate. And the moment you give that man a certificate, he leaves the village within 24 hours looking for a job in Manila. So why train men at all? So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have trained 9 grandmothers from the Philippines. And if you'd like to know more about them, extraordinary grandmothers. From the middle of the bush in the Philippines, they've come to India and gone back and become solar engineers. We have covered the 34 countries in Africa. We have covered Philippines, Asia. We just named the country and we have followed it. 47 of the least developed countries recognized by the UN, and the Barefoot model has reached 40. Covered the Pacific, and we've covered South America. And of course, our biggest fan was Michelle Bachelet when she was looking after the UN. Unfortunately, president of Chile now. But she was very good. So, 700 grandmothers from 70 countries around the world, and not one failure. Not one grandmother failed us. Can you imagine the extraordinary grandmothers today of the world? Illiterate and yet proved an example, become a change agent, become a role model. So we had His Holiness the Dalai Lama coming to us, and he was absolutely fascinated. And he looked at these women and said something. We made a puppet of him too. He said something very profound. He said, now that you have shown the Barefoot College working in practice, can the experts and the professors make it work in theory? They can't, because we are breaking all the rules, and yet it seems to be working. So I'll end with a quotation of Mahatma Gandhi. He said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Thank you very much. I'm keeping to my time, 3 minutes for questions. Any questions? We would love anyone who would like to support the grandmothers of the Philippines to come up. We need a lot of help. So if anyone has a CSR policy, we'd love to talk to you. We want more grandmothers to be trained in the Philippines. Please, any questions? Please.
Jimmy Ferguson from the United States. The future of the Barefoot College as it relates to healthcare for the doctors, physicians, the nurses, and other healthcare professionals.
We have found, and this was totally by surprise, that if you solar electrify a village in the middle of a bush anywhere in the world, it's a family planning tool. Less babies are born next year. Because, you know, there are better things to do when the light comes on. They're more productive. Their income levels have gone up. We have actually trained traditional midwives in these places because they used to all deliver through lanterns and through candles and it was unheard of. So we said, why don't we give you a LED solar light, bright, clean light, so that you can deliver more hygienically. They are strapped to it, they went to it, and now everywhere, all the 700 villages that we have solar electrified all over the world today, we gave a solar lantern to the traditional midwives so that they can deliver hygienically. We start from there. Every village has a rural electronic workshop with 4 more panels, so you can have a refrigeration for the vaccines, you can have a computer for the children in the school, so it is a win-win situation today. So it's not only solar electrifying a house, but you're actually changing the mindset of communities to the way they look at it. Grandmothers today were always written off by everybody. Men say, oh, take my grandmother. 6 months, doesn't matter. She goes like a grandmother and comes back like a tiger. She solar electrifies the village, and every grandmother we asked, what was the effect you had when you came back? Husbands were scared of them for the first time. They couldn't imagine their husbands. They couldn't believe that this woman had come back. You know, when they go, it's like a funeral. When they come back, it's like a resurrection. You cannot imagine that these women can become solar engineers today. So health is a major input in solar electrification. We got an email from Malawi saying, thank you very much for solar electrifying my village, because it's for the first time there are no rats, no scorpions, and no snakes in my house. Can you imagine? When we solar electrified a village up in Kashmir at minus 40, we said, what was the benefit you had of solar lighting in your house? And she said, it's the first time I can see my husband's face in winter. Can you imagine? Living in darkness and minus 40 in a candlelight. So, any other questions, sir? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Gigi Simbulan from the Philippines. Thank you for a very enlightening lecture. In the Philippines, we have a lot of grandmothers, but we also have hundreds of thousands of teachers who have reached the retirement age and are now under retirement. And we believe that they can still be harnessed for something more productive than selling insurance, which is what, or endorsing certain products. So while we have a shortage of active teachers, we have an overflow of retired teachers who can still do much work. Can you give us a perspective on how we can still, that our society can benefit from the so many retired teachers who are still willing to learn and to work? Thank you.
If you have a teacher in a non-electrified village, and he or she has retired, we won't take any men because you know what I mean. We'll take only women. If there's a woman teacher who's retired in a village which is non-electrified, will you please write to me? We'll train her into a solar engineer.
Thank you so much. We'll do that.
Thank you very much for your speech. I'm very impressed. I am Rosalyn Wee, President of the Philippine Federation of Local Councils of Women. I go around the Philippines every year for 13 years to teach women to do business. Now, I would like to teach them what you're doing. Can we have a joint venture together?
No problem at all, madam.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be the last question, Mr. Roy. We would like to thank you so much for your sharing.